Hey everyone, RogueGold here. Welcome back to The Division 2. Today marks the beginning of a very hectic week for the game. Basically, after this video, and there's going to be one more upload later in the day, so keep an eye out for that. But all the focus is going to be on the new Broken Rain Incursion, which launches tomorrow, August 11th, as well as the Climax mission, the 2 new exotics this new patch is bringing. There's a lot of stuff, right? But before that happens, the development team went live today to talk about the PTS for Year 8 Season 3. Now, this is not going to go live until Friday, and we're not getting the full patch notes until Thursday, but they said that they wanted to get this out of the way, really, and explain all of this stuff before the huge content drop tomorrow. So, in an effort to try and keep all of this as concise and understandable as possible, we're going to split these topics up. But if you're here watching this video, this is going to be everything about Year 8 Season 3, everything that was revealed on today's dev stream, and that includes the new season, its modifiers, its gear, the PVE Rebalance that's coming, including, at long last, changes to True Patriot. So, there is a lot, and let's just get straight to it. So, we were joined today by Leo, one of our community developers, and Dragush, who is a game designer from Bucharest. And as we covered, they hopped on to discuss everything involving Year 8 Season 3. Dragush explained that he had previously worked on past seasons, including Year 7 Season 2 with Retaliation and the Zealot modifier set. So in case you were wondering about his qualifications, he's got some good ones. So, they got straight to it because there was a lot to cover, and as always, those things will be timestamped down below. But let's begin with Year 8 Season 3, which we learned here is going to be titled Red Horizon, and they said that this is a very overt season title name because as the season goes on, we are going to visibly see the horizon within DC reddening, and that's because the cleaners are coming to the city. So in the season, they're going to be fully integrated into the open world system with their own control points and all of that. Apparently, we will also see higher cleaner activity the longer the season goes on, so kind of a progressive unlocking. And just like this current season and Rise Up before it, there will be a new elite kill squad within Retaliation called Company 95, comprised of the cleaners. So that's the season pitch. They then dived into the new modifiers that we can expect. Under Pressure is going to be our global modifier. Now this acts as a pressure gauge. You build it up by doing various kill actions. So you can see on the chart there that headshots, multi-kills, skill kills, all of those will gain you different amounts of pressure. And then based on the threshold of the gauge that you've built up, that unlocks not only the use of your active modifier, but grants you primary and secondary stat bonuses. So in this example, you can see that is status effects and armor regen. Your pressure gauge, however, will decrease over time, even more so if you stay out of cover. So there's very much a management of this that you'll need to do. They shifted over then to taking a look at some of the active modifiers. However, it was stressed that these are not final, both in terms of their layout here and their descriptions. Leo said that for the entirety of this PTS build, it is an earlier one than we are going to have access to on Friday. So there were a good number of unfinished or currently not functioning things. But just to get a sense in an early preview, we have Fiery Aura as one of our actives. Dragush explained that this is akin to Zealot from back in that season. You gain damage resistance and you will burn enemies that you approach. Then you have Vicarious Combustion. This makes it so that if you headshot an enemy who is already on fire, that fire effect will get spread around in a certain radius, kind of similar to Eclipse. However, your burn damage will be reduced, so this seems to much more be about crowd control over direct damage with status. Finally, then we have Signed Shield Delivered, which is probably the one I'm most excited for because it buffs up your specialization, weapon range, and damage, as well as your shield health and damage, and so they noted that this will be most synergistic with Firewall because you get the shield that can be used alongside the flamethrower, and there are even more flamethrower buffs coming, so this is going to be a very fire flamethrower focused season. Under the passive modifiers, it is broken down into two categories, that being pressure and tools. The pressure mods deal with your handling and augmenting how the pressure gauge functions for the global mod. For some examples in there, they have beta and gamma formulas, and each of these swaps out the primary status effect bonus. One of those options is to hazard protection, so backfire builds are back, or even more specialization, weapon damage. As for the tools mods, these just give you new and wacky effects. They did point out that Microwave Coils is returning. This is one of the most popular passive modifiers that we've ever had in the game, so that's exciting. There is then another one that gives you even further flamethrower enhancements. There's one that grants increased movement speed with burning enemies, a bunch of stuff here. As for the hostile modifier, modifiers, we have Draining Pressure, Achilles Heel, and 1000 Cuts, and each of these deal with draining your pressure gauge in various ways, as well as having a secondary debuff. However, they said that if you ignite enemies who have these modifiers on them, it will then give you back whatever you lost. So they're very much incentivizing you incorporating burn into your build in some capacity. Alright, moving on, they then shifted over to show us some of the new gear and weapons we can expect with this new season. Firstly, that included the Steamer and Teapot, which are two named weapons featuring the season's new talent. Now this is kind of wild. Keep in mind, this is the perfect version and we did not get to see what the normal version will look like, but I have a hard time seeing this not being completely broken. It says the first 25% of your magazine has negative 100% crit chance. The remaining has plus 100% crit chance. I mean, maybe if the perfect version lowers that to like 50, I could see it making sense, but on an LMG, an escalation with like 250 rounds, that's going to be kind of broken. But anyway, that one should be interesting. They then showed us one of the new exotics we can expect for the season called the Fafnir shotgun. They also confirmed that this will be a season pass item. It's not going to be tied to the climax mission, and its talent, Dragon's Breath, reads as follows. This weapon fires Dragon's Breath shells. Each shot has a 10% chance of applying burn to the enemy. An enemy cannot be applied burn if they're already burning. Weapon damage is amplified by 30% of your status effects bonus. So very much tied into the season's theme of burning and statuses, but at a 30% amp, I could see that being pretty decent if you make a cool hybrid build. Finally, they then showed us the new Ember Engine gear set. This is going to come with 8% skill efficiency for the 2-piece, 30% status effects for the 3, and the 4-piece talent is then called Spontaneous Combustion. Every status effect you apply has a 20% chance of also applying burn to the enemy. If the status effect initially applied was burn, the enemy will receive plus 25% burn damage for the duration of the burn. So another yellow focus set after we had Ortiz Reficere this season. I'll be interested to see what people can come up with for it. I don't know if it's something that I will mess around with a ton, but if you were curious, the chest piece talent on this increases that chance to apply burn to 40%, and although we did not see the backpack talent, I believe they noted that it will increase the total damage of burn that you can apply. Okay, now if you were wondering why that section seemed a little bit light in terms of the reveals for new items, the rest of that plays into the PVE Rebalance that is coming this season. This was a pretty big surprise, but yes, similar to what we had back in, I want to say it was year 6, season 2. They're doing a pass on many of the existing items that we have in the game, trying to make them more relevant, more exciting. So, a couple of things to note here. They confirmed that Striker is not being nerfed. That was a misconception that came out of the previous dev stream. This rebalance they're doing is coincidentally timed because this was not something that they just decided to do after that conversation, but rather it is something that has been in the works for quite some time. What we are going to see them doing here is buffing up many of the other sets and items within the game to try and raise them to the relevance of Striker. They noted, however, that for this specific rebalance and pass, red core builds are being prioritized first, with 2 exceptions. They said that the Ortiz and True Patriot sets are going to be included in this. Now, the full list of these changes is going to be included in those aforementioned patch notes on Thursday, but they basically describe their philosophy behind changes to gear sets specifically, and that is that they said based on the complexity of using the set, that is going to determine how much power output you can expect to receive from it. Meaning, if I were to dumb that down, shooting your weapon at an enemy, building damage, that's very easy, versus if you had to do a backflip, do a 360, shoot an enemy in the head and then shoot their toes. Should that be the next gear set? That sounds kind of fire. No, but that would then give you more power because you have to do more things to unlock that bonus. So anyway, they proceeded by giving us one example here, and that was to True Patriot. That's right. After a year, 2 years of being teased that changes for this set would eventually happen, we now have them here. Now, we did not get to see the chest piece or the backpack talents for this, or if they have changed, but what we can see is that not only have they changed the 2-piece to be weapon handling, but they've also buffed the 4-piece. You will now receive 15% amplified damage for a red debuff. The white debuff still remains at 2%, but the blue is up to 10%. And again, TBD on how the chest and backpack talents may further affect that. So, very interesting indeed. Again, there's going to be a whole lot more of these to test out on Friday when the PTS launches, but I'll be very curious to hear people's thoughts on that, given how long we've been waiting for it. That's not all, though. They also confirmed that brand sets are going to be receiving lots of changes. The primary one being the more niche stats that are available on brands right now. Examples they gave included swap speed or shock resistance. Those are going to be fully removed. They're adding in one stat to the potential list here, and that is protection from elites. But in the absence of those others, as well as just to try and revitalize interest in some of these, they're going to be altering what bonuses are available on brand sets to give them higher and more appealing bonuses. The one example they showed us here was for 511. The one piece of that is now going to be 10% protection from elites, the two piece is 100% increased threat, and the three piece is 30% hazard protection. Now, another interesting announcement is that they said new brand sets are no longer going to be added to the game, and that begins with this new season. There is no new brand coming with Red Horizon. They said they feel as though stat saturation has been reached. There are really no more exciting new combos to make with these stats that we have existing in the gear game. To compensate for that loss, however, they said that more new named items are going to be released each season, and that includes them sometimes repeating previous perfect talents that we already have on different brands than they're currently available. That said, the items that we're getting for Season 3 look to round off the perfect talent roster. They're giving us the final 4 that we did not have perfect versions for, so that includes perfect tag team, perfect reassigned, perfect protector, and perfect concussion. Now, they did have one more new exotic to show us, however they were waiting to reveal it until getting to this PVE Rebalance section, and you'll see why. Here it is, it's called Iron Will, and the talent, Resolve, says your next body shot will be considered a headshot. This has a 2-second cooldown, and it cannot be used with a shotgun. This might sound oddly close to you to the Determined weapon talent that we have, and that is because they are changing Determined. It is now going to function as the perfect version does, meaning that you can no longer create an infinite headshot chain. However, this exotic chess piece, if you want to run it, does offer a legitimate replacement to that. The only difference is, notably, you cannot use this in conjunction with Headhunter, which was really the combination that made Determined so problematic. So, there you go. The PVE Rebalance entails a vast majority of buffs and other beneficial changes, but there is one notable nerf or reworking, and that is going to be Determined. After this, they moved on to talk about PvP changes. They noted several changes that are going to be live in the game tomorrow with Year 8 Season 2.3. We're going to cover those in the patch notes for that update, which again is coming in a video later today. However, talking about Season 3 and the PTS in particular, we have augments getting retuned for PvP combat, and that is because we are receiving the new Blackout Dark Zone. This is going to feature no PvP normalization, the enabling of shade and expertise levels, and the use of prototype gear. Not a ton of additional information on this, but I'll be interested to check it out on Friday. Also confirmed then was the fact that we are getting the next phase of the PvP Rebalance with skills that is coming alongside Season 3. So we didn't get any details in this stream, but the full changes for that, the full table of what's happening, will be included in those PTS patch notes. They noted that on the PvP side, this is going to be a big focus for the PTS, so please take a look at them, give feedback if you're interested and involved in PvP, but that is definitely exciting, and I'm curious to see what they have in store. They also briefly went on to talk about the Toxic DZ. If you did not see the news, this is now going to be a permanent addition to the game, whereas it was previously just going to be part of Season 2. Because of that switch, though, and the fact that we are going to lose the modifiers from the season, which tie in heavily to the gameplay flow within here, they're making some key changes. Now all factions can appear here, not just the hyenas. There are, of course, going to be no more sample canisters to collect and extract. They confirmed that extracting contaminated gear from this DZ will now cleanse your toxicity levels, which I think is a great change. And I'm sure many of you will be happy about this. They are going to be disabling PvP normalization. So now when you go into the Toxic DZ, your full PvE build and power is active. That said, they did note that this will not include the use of prototype gear. The Toxic DZ will function like a raid or incursion where you can wear those items, but their power gets normalized down. So those were all of the big announcements. However, they did have one more topic to discuss, and that was on prototype gear recalibration. You may recall that in our previous dev stream recap, we talked about how the devs confirmed that this feature, which has been long requested and awaited ever since the introduction of prototype, they stated that it would be coming with Season 3. What they said here, however, is that this is still a work in progress, and they are no longer committing to launching this alongside the release of Season 3. They're prioritizing quality with this. They want to deliver a polished and finished finished product. And Leo said himself, quote, "We don't want to deliver a half-baked version." So hopefully that means that they're taking the time to make this as good as it can be, but I guess we will have to wait and see when we end up hearing about prototype gear recal. Alright, everybody, well there you have it. That is your recap for the Year 8 Season 3 PTS dev stream. One final reminder, all of this is going to be accessible and playable come Friday. The full patch notes will be live on Thursday, but that is a bit of a preview as for what to expect, including the new season modifiers, the new gear, exotics and weapons that are coming, the big surprise PVE rebalance. So we covered a lot. I would love to hear all of your thoughts on what we did take a look at today. What do you think about what's new, what's being changed, what's being nerfed in the case of Determined? Let me know. I'll be very curious to hear all of your thoughts. Stay tuned right here on the channel. Once again, we have a second video coming later today to break down tomorrow's patch and the new incursion launch. And there will be more videos coming this Friday and over the weekend to cover what is in store with the PTS. So that's all for me for now. Thank you all so much for coming by and watching, and I'll see you back soon. RogueGold. Ow. Oh! We just got a Ravenous! Haha! I might not be friendly. Let's go.
Coming to the Division 2.
Let's go!
And